Ask Mapped, episode 125. Here we are again, back for live weekly questions and answers with some of the Mapped and Medical School Headquarters expert advisors. They're waving to you from their tiny little boxes. Friends, this used to be called Ask the Dean. Now it's called Ask Mapped. Now we're kind of going back to our medical school headquarters umbrella, so we might name it again. If you have an idea of what we should call this lovely free advising hour, please feel free to type it in the chat or send us an email. We are looking for ideas. In the meantime, I'll do some introductions. If you don't know me, I'm Rachel Grubbs. Oops, I'm not on banners. Let someone else do that. I am the MAP co-founder along with Dr. Ryan Gray, who is earning a much-deserved vacation right now. I've had 20 years of experience in MCAT and premed process advising, so I'm old. I know lots. And, you know, the thing about premed expertise is it's kind of like sports. You're not an expert unless you keep learning. So I love to keep keeping my eye on things and then continuing to share those expertise nuggets with you. Next up, we have Dr. Scott Wright. So Dr. Wright is the former director of admissions at UT Southwestern Med School. He's also retired executive director from TMD SAS. Yep. I said it correctly. Yes, otherwise known as the Texas Med and Dent Application Service.
Yep.
How are you today, Dr. Wright?
Doing well. Excited to get to answer all these questions from all these fantastic students.
Me too. I love this part of my week.
Yep.
And Verinia Granum, Masters of Education, former assistant dean in the pre-health and STEM advising at Hofstra University. You've been advising students in general for, gosh, I think close to 20 years, and pre-meds and pre-health in specific for about 10 years now. We're so excited you're on our team. It's been, what, a year and a half now?
Yes. I love being here. Thank you.
And how are you today?
I'm doing great. Just like you both, looking forward to talking to students or answering questions. This is a kind of stressful time of year, right?
It is.
Considering now we're heading into that sort of gray zone of I haven't heard anything. What's going on?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. We've got a few questions already, but I know more will be coming in soon. So let's start with one I know everybody is thinking about. If I am a student who applied this cycle, so I applied sometime, hopefully May, June, but maybe July, August, September, October, and I'm hoping to start med school in summer, fall 2023. So that's the position I'm in. My apps are in, my secondaries are in, but maybe I don't have any interviews yet, or I have interviews but no acceptances. At what point do I decide that I need to reapply? What do you think, Verinia?
That is the question. So we generally recommend right around Thanksgiving, right? If you haven't heard anything by Thanksgiving, end of November, around there, that is a good time to start thinking, okay, I'm going to try to stay optimistic, but let me, prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and start thinking about what do I need to potentially address? Look at my application again. Start looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb. See if there's some areas that you yourself can identify. Maybe this was it, or maybe I needed this, or maybe I didn't do enough of this. But again, still staying optimistic because it is still early, so to speak, right? You can get an interview all the way up until May of next year. Of 2023. So, but by trying to prepare from now, you give yourself enough time to say, maybe it's the MCAT and I have to think about retaking it. Just starting early enough so that you're not caught, in April, let's say, trying to figure things out when you haven't heard by then.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. And so, Dr. Wright, maybe expand on that. What are some things that if someone thinks they might have to reapply, what should they be looking for in their application as a potential weakness they could improve?
Well, obviously, they would want to look at the numbers. You want to critically analyze your GPA trends, things like that, as well as your MCAT score, not just the total score, but also the individual subsection scores. Look at those as, very critically and try to understand where you've applied and what what relevance those numbers have to the median numbers for the schools that you've applied to, and if you're kind of just where you stand with regard to the numbers. But then also, I think you have to sort of reflect on other elements of the application, your activities. Do you have clinical hours? Do you have how many clinical hours do you have? How have you talked about those clinical hours, both in your personal statement, but also in the activity descriptions and the most meaningful essay that you wrote with regard to what you chose on those, and the secondary app. So it's you can put all of what I just said within the context of reflection. You have to sort of reflect on what's gone on, what does all this look like, and that's where I think it can sometimes be helpful to do that with someone who, like our staff here at MAPD at medical school headquarters. If you want to schedule a time for us to do an application review and say where are the weaknesses here? I'm not hearing anything. Kind of help me identify where are the things that I need to. You can do that with your pre-med advisor. Some medical schools, probably not in the midst of the process, but some medical schools will do that toward the end of the process in late September. Not late September, late spring. We'll do that with you. Some medical schools will, a lot won't do that, but it just depends. So reflection, getting some knowledgeable advice about where the weaknesses are.
Yep, great. All right, what questions do we have? Dewa says, is working as a youth program organizer in a religious center a good experience for extracurriculars? I mean, sure, why not? I definitely don't want to say no to this. What I do want to qualify my yes with is a good experience is what you make of it. No, there's almost no activity that someone can share with me and just say the name and let me know if it's a good experience, because it's a good experience if it's meaningful to you, if it has an impact on you, if you make an impact on the experience itself, on the center or on the youths in the program. So I really don't know, Dewa, until I hear you talk about it or I read the essay that you're going to write about it. But as a way of you sort of assessing now, right? One way you can kind of test yourself for this is when you leave that center, when you're done doing your youth program work for the day, is your head buzzing, right? Are you thinking this went really well, it was such a high, or did something happen that was kind of heartbreaking that's hard for you to get over? And if that's the case, that's usually a sign that there's impact happening. And what I would strongly encourage you to do is keep a journal. You can keep a journal in MappdApp. We have a free activity tracker, but it doesn't have to be in MappdApp. It can be in a paper notebook. It can be in a spreadsheet, wherever you want to track it. But don't just be writing down, Wednesday, November 9th, 4 hours, right? Do that, but then also write, today this happened. And don't worry about the essays yet, because those are far away. Just write some notes to remind yourself of what's buzzing around in your brain. And then that way, when it comes time to write the essays, you're going to be able to tell which ones are good or not based on the notes you left yourself for, oh my gosh, I have a lot of stories to share here. This really has an impact on who I am as a person. So yeah, it sounds good, but only you can decide.
Yep. And can I just quickly add to that I think this question, they might be thinking about whether or not this experience is something that medical schools would be interested in, since it's not necessarily a clinical experience or a patient care experience. And absolutely, if it's something that you enjoy, do it. I have a student I'm currently working with who one of his most meaningful activities has been helping out in cleaning trails and maintaining trails in a national park. And he wrote about it in a way that really showed why this was impactful and meaningful for him. Had nothing to do with, medicine necessarily, but he was passionate about it. So go for it. And as Rachel said, if it's something you enjoy, definitely do it.
Personal statement is why medicine, but activities essays are tell me about you. So they're going to have some med and some non-med. Morgan asks, I am looking to take upper division bio classes for the opportunity to boost science GPA. I'm wondering what upper division bio classes you would recommend to help with MCAT prep, anatomy, physiology, etc. Yeah, it's a good question, Morgan. And I would say it kind of varies. I mean, the thing that's most important for the MCAT, I would say, I mean, it all matters, right? But the single most important subject, I would argue, is biochemistry. And you don't even necessarily need multiple semesters. Some people take a year, but that single first semester of biochemistry, those fundamentals, you need to know them forwards and backwards, because biochem can actually show up in 3 of the 4 sections of the MCAT, right? It's obviously going to be in biochem, but the section that we often refer to as Chem Phys is actually chemical and physical foundations of biological systems. There's biochem in there. And then sometimes biochem shows up in the psych soc because of the neuroscience. So know your biochem, know it forwards and backwards. After that, I personally don't think that there's much upper level bio that's going to make a huge impact on your MCAT. You know, some people say make sure you've done molecular bio. It certainly can't hurt. But I think at that point, when you're thinking about upper division classes, you're more thinking about, like you said, to boost your GPA and also to boost your readiness for med school. Because and I'm seeing Scott chime in, so I'll let him kind of add on to this. But at that point, because the MCAT mostly is lower level science, by which I mean like lower level college science. But med school is going to be almost exclusively upper level bio. So the more foundation you get, the easier it's going to be for you when you get to that super speedy curriculum where, you know, in college we do biochem in 15 weeks and in med school you do it in 2 weeks. So it's a little bit faster. Dr. Wright, what else did you have to say on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the AAMC every year surveys incoming medical students as well as outgoing medical students that are graduating. The graduation questionnaire, among other things, asks a question: what undergraduate classes did you have that really helped prepare you and were valuable for you in your medical school curriculum? And there are several classes that are really pointed out in that. I would say anatomy is a big one. Microbiology and immunology, those are 3 that really get mentioned a lot on that survey. So to the point, not in terms of preparation for the MCAT, but in terms of preparation for what will come in medical school, I think those 3, in addition to biochemistry that you mentioned, Rachel, but those 3, micro, anatomy, and immunology are ones that are often mentioned.
Great. Yeah, and then I guess I'll say, Morgan, if you're really looking specifically for MCAT prep, then what I might ask you to consider doing is consider your critical reading and critical thinking skills and ask yourself, do I need to take one more really rigorous English course? Do I need to take philosophy? Because a lot of people forget that the MCAT, the AAMC themselves backs up what I'm saying here. The MCAT is about half content, and the other half is your ability to read passages, to analyze, to do scientific inquiry, to look at tables and charts. So, pre-meds, and this may or may not apply to you, Morgan, but many pre-meds that I know tend to see humanities as like blow off or easy courses. And that always makes me nervous because many pre-meds, it's not about talent, it's about ability. And like, it's about skill, and many pre-meds have really worked hard on their science and math skills to the detriment of their critical reading and problem solving skills. So if you're really literally thinking about, I want to boost my MCAT score, my question is, how strong of a reader are you? And are you ready to do some really, really rigorous, both science and non-science reading for the MCAT? Okay, Jan says, why do I not have more interviews? Parentheses, only one from an MD school. I consider myself a very competitive applicant. Research, clinical, 3.97 GPA, 516 MCAT, applied early. I just don't understand. Lasai.
Yeah.
So Jan, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. I saw your question come in while we were talking about it. So I'm guessing that you heard some of our chat about kind of just general time of year things to consider. what I want to first say is you have one interview. That's awesome. A lot of people don't have one yet. So that's something. And I think even if you're feeling stressed, I hope you're taking a moment to be proud of that one interview. That's a high compliment. The other thing I would say is you listed a whole bunch of scores and activities here, but what I didn't hear anything about is I worked really hard on my essays and I made sure that they weren't trite and I wasn't trying to just tell the admissions committees what they wanted to hear. And I made sure that they read like a breath of fresh air that sound just like I talk and not like some fancy stilted computer. And maybe you're assuming that I know you did all those things, but often when someone cites to me all their numbers, but then they're not having a lot of interviews, my thought is, were your essays compelling? It's okay that they're common. Most pre-meds have a lot in common, but did they sound like you? Verenia or Scott, anything else to chime in here?
I would just say that, I think that one thing that you did not include here, you said research and clinical. You did not say anything about community involvement. And many medical schools these days are really looking for a connection to community. And this would be volunteerism outside of clinical or research. This would be connection with your community in such a way. And that can be a variety of things. And so that is an element here that you didn't mention. And you may have all that stuff, but I know there are a lot of medical schools that really want to see that. And if they don't see that, it's a little bit of a red flag to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Verenia, anything else?
No, I was just thinking, the intangibles, right? What you were saying before about how did you present yourself in your application? When did you do these activities? Did you pack everything in 1 year? Or, has there been consistency across the board in what you've been doing that shows medical schools that, you've thought through this process and it wasn't something you just kind of approached, from a checkbox perspective. So it's all about the
or like a school essay, because it's not a school essay. So you might be great at reading school essays, and that has nothing to do with your ability to write a personal statement.
Exactly. So.
All right, Tiffany. I took my MCAT in 2020 and got a 519. Pause to say, woo! Due to 2 unsuccessful cycles, I might have to retake it due to expiry. Oh, are you from Canada or overseas? Because we tend to say expiration, but I know what you mean. Would it be a red flag if I didn't score as high? I'm going to say no to red flag unless, like, I don't know, you get like in the 490s or something, in which case, I would really worry about what that 519 meant, right? But if you took an MCAT every day for a week after your 519, you might get anywhere from a 510 to a 525 on any of the given exams the days after, because not every MCAT is the same. They vary in terms of content coverage. You'd vary in how you feel that day. And that's just the way standardized tests work. That's why so many standardized tests talk about ranges of scores, where they'll say like, here's the like kind of plus minus, because that's just the way testing works. So I definitely, don't, I was going to say don't take it lightly, but you won't. I mean, no one takes almost no one takes the MCAT lightly. Do your best, but if your best comes in at a 514, I would not sweat it. I wouldn't think, oh no, now I have to take again. If it comes in at a 505, maybe you'd want to retake it only because you can do better. But I wouldn't call it a red flag unless like there's some really egregious score drop.
Yep.
Mame, I think, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. Hi, is it possible to enroll in US-based schools for pre-med if you already have a bachelor's degree from your home country? Will it be considered a second bachelor's? Scott, you want to take this one?
Sure. So international students have a very complicated sort of situation. And it is, and not just international students. There are some U.S. students who go outside of the U.S. to do their undergraduate experience and stuff. So, so what I would say, yes, you can. It would be considered a second bachelor's degree. Yes, in a short answer to that question. What I would do if I were you is go to your local, to the university that you're considering going to, and to the admissions office, and get them to tell you their process of how they look at your foreign degree coursework, how they integrate that into what they have, if you're going to get credit for that, if you're going to get any credits, if they lump them all together as credit, or if they single each course out. That is going to dictate what you're going to have to do at the university, in order to not only apply, but what you're going to be required to do to get a second bachelor's degree. So yes, it is possible to do that. It's just going to depend on the institution in terms of how they will integrate that in, and also what they will do with the individual courses. But I do think that you will want to do that in order to be applicable to American medical schools.
Great, thank you. What's next? Brandolyn, how should I move forward after a rough start with a trend of several withdrawals for medical reasons? I have 3 semesters left. Vernie, I feel like this is a question for you.
Sure.
You have a history not only of helping people get into med school, but you've done a lot of academic advising. So you've seen this happen. You've seen leaves of absences. You've seen people who had to drop and restart. What do you recommend for this person?
Well, Brandolyn, just one foot in front of the other. You've had some struggles for a variety of reasons. That's not going to define you. If anything, it probably made you a little stronger. But just put one foot in front of the other. Start with a course load that you can manage. If it's just one science, I don't know, you said you have 3 semesters left. I don't know how many prereqs you've taken, but if it's just one science and the rest are your graduation requirements, start with that. It'll take a little longer, but that's okay. The goal is to try to now establish an upward trend in your grades. We don't have a lot of information in terms of your other grades. If it's just one semester of withdrawals, but you have a solid GPA otherwise, we need more information there. But assuming that it's just been kind of rough and in general, start slow full time, but then slowly maybe next semester add more courses, maybe catch up over the summer sessions as well. And know that this doesn't define you. These withdrawals will not on their own keep you out of medical school. It's what you do from here on out, and continue that upward trend. That will make a difference. Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Good question, Brandolyn. And
Yes.
thanks for being brave and sharing. No shame in it. It happens.
That's right.
We have someone that we work with who actually presented at one of our MappdCons back when it was still called National Premed Day, who is now a resident at the Cleveland Clinic. And she has shared her story publicly, so I feel comfortable saying this. She dropped out of school 3 times over a decade before she finally figured out her life enough to really do school right. So, at one point her GPA was like 1.8. It was just littered with W's and D's and F's. And she had a long, hard path, right? She had to take a lot of credits to prove that she was a different student, but she did it. And she was getting clinical the whole time. So she knew she wanted to be a doctor because that was the favorite part of her life. She got into a med school and then she matched at the Cleveland Clinic, right? So, I know that's just one story, but you are more than your stats. Your story is going to matter. So just keep pushing and keep doing clinical because it'll remind you why you want to do this. Garrett, does my clinical experience need to be diversified? Garrett, my friend, I don't think I can answer this because I have no idea what your clinical experience is now. Brittany, do you want to talk briefly about what a good clinical experience looks like?
Sure. So clinical experience, when we think of clinical experience, we think of it as any opportunity where you are actively involved in the care of another human being, whether that be actual taking vitals or, in a medical setting, or, helping them, feed them, bathe, get medication for them, whatever it is. You're actively caring and impacting someone's health and well-being. That's considered patient care experience. We don't have much more information, Garrett, regarding what you're doing right now. So we can't really say if it needs to be diversified. I think patient care is patient care, no matter how and when you're doing it. But yeah, we would need to probably know a little bit more.
I agree.
Got another question. I'm going to guess this is Emil, or maybe Emily.
Emily.
I would love to know how to say your name, but I'm going to move forward with your lovely name, whatever it is. Can grade trends make up for a poor GPA? I'm a non-trad and I graduated with a 2.0 GPA. In a post-bac program, I have a 4.0 with 100 plus quarter credits. Is it still realistic to consider an MD school? Yeah, I love this question. I don't know about make up for, right? It's more like show that you're a different student today than you used to be. And when we talk about upward trends, we often talk about, well, how many credits do you need to prove that you're a different student today than you used to be? And we usually talk about that in semester credits. So sometimes you'll hear us say, at least 20, at least 30. Some schools even want 40, but that's semester credits. You've got 100 plus quarter credits, which works out to roughly like 65, 67 semester credits. So it sounds to me, if you had 2.0, but now you have 4.0 for what is like almost 2/3 of a new degree, that sounds to me like as long as those courses are upper level sciences, right? If it's a master's of public health, if it's, something in the humanities or social sciences, then maybe you've just proven that you're good at some subjects, but not others. But if the bulk of those credits are rigorous upper level biology or pre-med requisites, then you're probably one of those people that I could call having had a successful upward trend. And I think we put up a banner for MappdCon earlier. Maybe Veronica can find it and show it again. Anytime any of you pre-meds have questions like this, you can ask them here, but you can also go create a free Mappd account. And Mappd is always free, but we have a pro level that we give you a free trial to when you start. And the pro level includes messaging with us. And it's often we who are here on camera. It's often Verinia or Courtney, but it's me, it's Scott, it's Ryan, it's all of us. And you can enter all your courses and actually let us look at your trend and then say, hey, I would love to get a little bit of feedback on my GPA trend. Do you think that based on my grades, I'm ready to apply? And obviously it's more than grades, but I understand you're just asking about that segment. It's the most common question we get in the Mappd messaging. Would you agree, Vernia? Is, hey, would you look at my GPA trend?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We're used to it. We're happy to do it. And it can take a really long time to do if someone just emails us transcripts. But if you go to the trouble of filling out MappdApp is doing all the math and all the charting for us. So it's very easy for us to take a quick look and give you feedback. And we're very happy to do that for anyone who has a Mappd account. So I think you're in good shape. And if you want more reassurance with more detail, go ask in Mappd. And yay, because it sounds like you worked really hard.
Oh, yeah.
And I would make one last comment on this. I would change the wording, Emily. It said, you said at on your question, is it still realistic to consider MD school? I would say, is it still realistic to consider medical school, MD or DO? Really focus on, you want to go to medical school. And that may be what you meant, but I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, good point. We are big believers. MD and DO both get you where you want to go, both get you into competitive specialties.
Yep.
Consider all your options. All right, Kawal, Scott, you'll be coming back on camera in a second. Could I please ask Dr. Wright, does UT Southwestern accept update letter? What kind of updates are worth mentioning? Higher level classes, publications, continuous clinicals. I am going to pass this to Dr. Wright. I want to remind you guys that Dr. Wright was the director of admissions at UT Southwestern a number of years ago, and every med school reserves the right to change all of their policies and all their wants every single year. So anytime we're sharing expertise with you, we are sharing patterns we've seen over time That is not a guarantee of what they want this year. So you always need to go check the school's website to see what they say. But Scott, I do know you have a lot of wisdom to share about update letters, so let's let you chime in there.
Great. So, Kawal, what I would say is, number one, I don't readily know right offhand what UT Southwestern will do currently in terms of update letters. You would just need to check with their admissions office and see what they'll accept and what they won't. What are worth updating if a school accepts an update letter. I would say you don't want to mention things that are continuous. In other words, I'm continuing to do X, I'm continuing to do Y, whatever. That is not really an update. Anything new is worth updating. You have a new publication, you have a new activity that you've started. Maybe you graduated, maybe you took additional classes and you got the grades and they were all spectacular or whatever. Those are things. The key to update letters is short and sweet, get to the point, bullet point the activities that you want to update them on, and then say that's it, thank you, and you're done. You if at all possible, you don't want them to have to scroll at all or too much. If they have to scroll in the email, then it's not gonna be good. That's it.
That's a great tip. If they have to scroll, it's too long.
Yep.
I was chiming in and I was on mute. Yeah, 100% agree. If you have to scroll, it's too long. That also goes for sending us messages. Like, that's Ryan's rule of thumb. He does still try to answer DMs, but if you make him scroll, he's not answering it. Yeah. So I think a lot of people think, but I have to give you all this context. No, it's your job to whittle it down so that context is embedded into part of one sentence.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Like, if they, especially with an update later, if they want more, they'll go look at your application.
Yep, indeed.
All right, what's next? Bob G. Bob G says, is there any way to review letters of recommendation? If I have to apply again, I want to know whether I can rely on the writers used. Ooh, tricky one. So Bob, when you request a letter of recommendation, what most of the services do, whether you're going directly through the applications or through like a third party like Interfolio, or coming soon, MappdCon, my LOR,
heard it here first.
Now, because our letter of rec portfolio is coming really soon. Usually when you request it, you have to give away your rights for confidentiality at that time. Now, a lot of med schools will say we only accept letters that you've made confidential. Every once in a while, you're going to find a grad program or a med school that doesn't care if it's not confidential. Now, sometimes the professor says, you know what, you marked it confidential, I'm still sending you a copy, and like, that's between you and them. But the truth is, once you've waived your rights, then you don't have the right to see it. So I wanted to answer you technically because you were asking a technical question. What I think this starts to get at is, how do I know if I'm going to get a good letter? And I think there's a lot of conversation to be had here. So even though it's not what you asked, I think it's probably the question behind your question. So let's dig into that a little bit. Verinia, what can students do to feel confident in their letter of like the quality of the letter of recommendation?
Absolutely. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that the person that you are requesting the letter from is someone that can speak to you as a candidate and can strongly say, this person, has these competencies and these abilities and performed well in my class. And, they know you well. We can't tell based on this question whether the letter writers you used were individuals that knew you very, very well. And the way you do that is by establishing a relationship, hopefully early on, if you're still in school, early on in the class, let's say, so that they can get to know you as you're progressing through their course and you're going to their office hours and you're coming in with questions and you're showing interest in what they're doing and really getting to know them so that they can get to know you. Or if it's someone at a volunteer site that, making sure that it's someone that you've connected with and they don't just see you once a month or something like that. So really getting to know the person that you're going to request this letter from is the first step. right? Making sure that they know you well enough to speak to your qualities as a candidate.
Yeah,
That's it.
completely agree. Yeah, I guess what I would chime in here, and this is like always my pro tip for earlier pre-meds. So those of you who are first year, second year, or you're just starting your career change, or just getting back to, do your non-traditional path, the best time to build a letter of recommendation relationship is when you're in the class with them. So a lot of people think, oh, letters of rec, I'll worry about that when I apply. No, worry about it freshman year. Worry about it sophomore year. So you're taking Gen Chem, you love the professor. It turns out she also teaches biochem. Make friends with her. Make sure you take her biochem, not someone else's, right? And you can tell her, you shouldn't ask for the letter of rec 3 years before med school, right? Letters of rec should usually be dated the year you apply, but you can say, hey, I'm pre-med and I'm really hoping to form a relationship with you so that in a few years you feel comfortable writing me a letter of rec. Would that be okay? Can I stay in touch after this course is over? And do the things you need to do to impress them in the course. As someone who is taught a lot, I'm here to tell you, I know who's making eye contact with me and who is not. And after a while, I'm not teaching to the people who are tuning me out, right? I'm teaching to the people who are engaged with me. So just showing up and nodding, even if you're not in the front row, not everyone's a front row sitter. If you're engaged with me, I see you. If you show up to my office hours, I remember you. So do those things, right? Build the relationship. A lot of people say like, oh, it feels awkward. Well, it's really awkward if you ignored your professor all semester and then later try to get a letter out of them. Like show some interest in their research. Show some interest in the work they're doing for the lesson plans they're teaching you. It will go a long way.
Yep.
Damon wants to know, as someone with epilepsy, VNS therapy, will my medical school application be rejected for my epilepsy personal statement? Okay. Scott, I'm going to have you chat a little here.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do, Damon, is help you understand the difference between I have a diagnosis that might impact my med school experience versus what's in my personal statement.
Absolutely.
I think it might be two different questions here.
Yes.
But Scott, I'll let you start this because I know you have some experience with this kind of history.
Yeah. So there's several things here, Damon, that I want to really talk about. One is that my assumption is that when you say epilepsy personal statement, that the fact that you have epilepsy is a very important part of your story of why you want to go into medicine. It is integrally connected with your connection to your spark of what interests you in medicine originally and kind of how that's played out. So if that assumption is correct, then it makes a lot of sense to talk about your your journey and where that comes from and epilepsy being a part of that. Medical schools cannot discriminate on the basis of disability. And one might consider this as a disability. So I would say that you would not be rejected in and of itself because of that. Now, related to this is something called the what we used to call in the old days the essential functions, or I forget the term they use now. Mm-hmm. But it is basically, these are the things that you have to be able to do in medical school in order to enroll. And technical standards is also what it's called. And this would be things like you have to be able to stand up for a certain amount of time. You have to be able to do X, Y, and Z physically, and you have to be able to do X, Y, and Z mentally, etc. And so if your diagnosis and the epilepsy is controlled by virtue of medication or whatever, then you won't have seemingly a problem with the technical standards. If, however, because of your epilepsy, you would need some accommodation, then you would request that after you are accepted into the medical program. They would have, there's a process by which you would request accommodations because of whatever, and but in this case, epilepsy, if that's applicable. So that's kind of the way the process works. But to your immediate question, no, I do not think that you would be rejected solely because of that as a part of your application. I just think that in the personal statement, you have to be a little bit careful about how you talk about it. And I would say, don't make the whole personal statement about your epilepsy. You know, that can be something that you talk about with regard to why your initial interest was about medicine, et cetera. But, you know, you quickly want to move on into events that have really solidified, that have really nothing to do with epilepsy, et cetera. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, Damon just chimed in. Oops, my bad, Veronica. Sometimes I forget that I'm not supposed to be doing the production work and I just start clicking. Damon just chimed in to say, P.S. I wanted to know if there would be a bias, but thank you, everyone. I feel much better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no
by
bias,
law, Damon, there can't be a bias, right? And that's why you don't even have to disclose it until you've been accepted. Now, if you put it in your personal statement, that's your choice to disclose it early.
Right.
But the point that Scott is making about the personal statement is an important one. I wish that I had finished the landing page. We have a free personal statement storytelling workshop 1 week from today. I have the sign up page half baked. I wish I'd gotten it done before today. Make sure you're on our email lists, either for Mappd or MSHQ, and we'll send out a link to everyone who's on our email list to sign up for it. But a week from today, we will be talking at night. So not during Ask Map, but at 9 p.m. on Wednesday, the 16th, we'll be talking in depth about storytelling. So that'll be a session that Dr. Gray leads that talks about how you can compel med schools with your story, regardless of your stats. And one of the key elements of that is the personal statement should be personal, but it shouldn't be 100% about you. So it is very common for someone to talk about in their personal statement being ill themselves or having a loved one who's ill, because for so many of us, that's our start into healthcare. It's just experience. Because when you're a kid, where else are you going to experience a healthcare issue if not in yourself or your family, right? That's just where it happens. But the med schools also want to see that you've experienced healthcare with strangers, right? Because most of us love our grandmas, and not everybody loves taking care of someone else's grandma. So that's sort of what we're getting at when we're saying just be mindful of your personal statement, that it shouldn't just be solely about the epilepsy, because you need to prove that you can take care of other patients. Yeah. Just be sure you're on our email list. Keep an eye on our website. We'll make sure that you guys can get signed up for that workshop. That's a week from today on November 16th. Good. Thanks for the banner, Veronica. Kathy Birch. Oh, Kathy Birch. We know you well. Okay. I have years of experience as a diabetes educator. I have letter of rec from the medical directors of 3 different hospitals in 3 different states. I have 7 MCAT scores, from 472 to 505. I have an overall GPA of 3.4 with 4 degrees, science GPA of 2.9 with over 200 credits. Caribbean schools have immediately accepted me year after year, but I cannot get any U.S. schools to accept me. Do I just do Caribbean? Wow.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. I'm honestly not sure that we can answer this in this session, because I think there's probably a bunch of follow-up questions we'd need answered. Your GPA, like you said, isn't really going to budge at this point. You said you have experience as a diabetes educator. I don't know if that's going to count as clinical or not. You have letters of rec from medical directors of hospitals, which you've worked in. Okay, so presumably some of that was clinical, right? So that's my one question, is like, how much clinical do you have? And then the other thing we haven't talked about, Kathy, is your essays, right? All those intangibles we've talked about several times tonight. I don't know what your intangibles are. Typically, as a rough rule of thumb, I say only do Caribbean if you've really given US your best effort. I can tell you've given US a lot of effort. I don't know if it's been your best foot forward. And I think you've done some work with us in the past. Sometimes I remember names and faces and I don't remember where them from. I can't remember if you were in Academy for a little while this year and then maybe decided to take a pause. But yeah, that would just be my question is, did we ever have a time where you had the best stats you could, the best experiences you could, and an application that went in, June 5th? Like, did you put all those pieces together in one cycle? And I just don't know if that applied to you or not. And that's I think the question I would ask before I give up on US and do Caribbean.
Yeah. And we also don't know, by virtue of this, of your statement here, Kathy, how many times have you applied to US schools?
Mm-hmm.
What US schools have you applied to? Did you apply to MD and DO? What does that look like? If you applied numerous times to U.S. schools and gotten really nothing, then I agree completely with Rachel that this needs to be some deeper digging into this, and so I'd really strongly suggest a session with us to kind of really discuss this and kind of in a more deep way. But based on what you've said here, if you've applied numerous times to U.S. schools, then I would say Caribbean might be the way to go. But
yeah.
I agree that I think that we need some more digging here.
Yeah. Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Monique Hicks says, "Hi, during this gap year, I'm unsure if I should do a postbac or a one-year master's. How do you know if you should do a postbac?" All right, Scott, I feel like this is you've got a spiel ready-made for postbac versus masters. So I'm sure I'm going to just let you turn on the speech.
Well, I guess first, Monique, what I would say is I'd want to know a little bit more about why you think you need either one of them. Do you have a GPA issue? What's your trend look like? What are the numbers as they stand right now? As to why you're thinking in this direction. I would say, I think honestly that a undergraduate postbac program is going to be very worthwhile. I think that medical schools very much know how to interpret undergraduate coursework, so upper level biological sciences at a 4-year institution, university. I think you can't go wrong with that, especially if you do well in the classes, which ostensibly you would want to do extremely well. That's not to say there's anything wrong with master's degree postbac programs, like special master's programs, but they are often extremely expensive. And so I think there's a financial part of the picture there that you really have to consider also. And so, there's a lot to think about, but I would say you won't go wrong with an undergraduate postbac program.
Right. Yeah, and Scott touched on this, but just to reiterate, we see a lot of students mistakenly think that postbac or master's is the thing to do to fix the app. But if your grades are solid, it could be something else. It could be your MCAT. It could be your lack of clinical. It could be your essays. It might be that all your essays were great, but it took you 10 weeks to turn your secondaries around instead of 2 weeks, which is the recommendation. So just before you throw money at this, make sure it's not something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, it's 8 minutes to the hour. We still have time for one or two, depending on how long they are.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle says, "What are things to focus on during an unexpected gap year? I realized I won't be able to apply until after my final semester." Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of what we were just saying now.
Mm-hmm.
It might be grades, but it might be MCAT prep, or it might be clinical. You can't ever go wrong with getting more clinical, because if you're going to be a physician, your whole life is going to be clinical. So I definitely think that even if you have a lot of clinical, now that you're taking an extra year, you need to make sure to keep doing clinical. It doesn't have to be a full-time gig. Maybe you need to save money, so you want to serve nights and do clinical in the morning so that you can, make big money in tips and then still get some healthcare experience. Keep doing a little bit of shadowing. But exactly what to focus on, it's really analyze your application, looks at strengths and weaknesses, and then what you focus on are whatever the weaknesses are. And again, if you're not sure, we can help. But there's not a cut and dry answer for this because it depends on you, Kyle.
Yep.
Yep.
Jean St. Pierre, I don't know if I said that right. I'm volunteering with an NP by a church weekly. We provide needles to addicts, homeless, Narcan, safe injection kit, safe sex kit, wounds care education. Would that be patient care experience? Yes.
Sounds like it to me.
And thank you, because man, that's hard and important work. So thanks for doing it. I've read a lot about addiction in the last few years, and I'm blown away at how many studies show that if we just treat people who are struggling with a little bit of humanity, that they can often resolve their addictions on their own just by being treated. Like they're not evil for having this illness.
Yep.
So thank you for what you're doing.
And again, patient care experience, caring for the health of another human being. You are caring for the health of another human being by doing this, even if you're not the doctor.
And the setting doesn't matter.
The setting doesn't matter.
Right.
Yep.
Can be a church, can be out on the streets.
Nursing home, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Yeah. It warms my little heart.
Yeah, right?
Like feeling kind of teary. I'm like, thanks for doing that. All right. Victoria K. For a general MCAT study guide, is 1 month content review, 2 months of going through 7 practice tests in Anki, and 2 months for AAMC review a good breakdown of time? Yeah, I mean, that sounds fine.
Yeah.
You guys, I think, know, I mentioned at the beginning, I've been doing MCAT prep a long time. I was doing test prep before I got into advising. I actually got into advising because I would get frustrated meeting people at the MCAT moment and then learning things where I'm like, man, I wish I met you 2 years ago so I could have helped you do this better. So then I realized, oh, that's what I should start doing. Hence, Ryan and I made MappdCon. There is no one right test prep plan. Here's what you said about yours that I like. I'm hearing 5 months, which is usually a very reasonable amount of time, especially if it's part-time, which I think you put in a second note was. So that's smart, right? You're not trying to do a part-time prep in 2 months, which is for most people not going to go well. So I'm really excited that you are being strategic about how long you need. And I'm excited to see that you understand that content is just the foundation and that it's really the practice questions and the drilling and the reviewing that matter. If you want more help, an excellent resource is the Blueprint free study planner. So, Blueprint MCAT has lots of paid options, but they work a lot like we work. They also try to give free stuff to everybody and then paid for those who have the means. So if nothing else, I would say, go look at their study plan, because they'll ask you a series of questions. And it's like down to like, what days do I have to black out? How many hours per week? But also like, weaknesses, strengths, and then they'll give you a recommended study plan. And, you can follow it or not. You can accept it and then make manual changes. It's really flexible. I used to be with Blueprint, as some of you may know, and I was there as we've had the study plan even back to the next step days, but I was there with Blueprint as we were evolving it and making it even better. And it's just one of the best, most robust study planner tools available out there. So, the fact that they give it away for free, I think is just phenomenal. So I would definitely check that out if you're looking for more guidance, Victoria. AJ Philly, if I do not get into med school my first cycle, do you think being a teacher for the gap year is a suitable thing to do? Or should I just add on clinical? We kind of talked about this already. It's similar to some of the other questions. Veronica, nope, you're not Veronica. Verinia.
Yeah.
Do you want to chime in?
Sure. We always encourage students to, if you're going into medicine, you want to try to get out and get as much experience around patients. Teaching, if you're interested in teaching, I guess you could potentially do that. If it's a means to, if it's a source of income for you, but you still want to stay connected to patients in some way. So it's not that it's a bad thing to do. Medical schools are just going to probably wonder why you're teaching and not working with patients. But as long as you provide kind of context and show why this was meaningful for you, that's fine. But again, just try to still stay around patients, even if it's volunteering on the weekends or something like that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right, it's 1:58, so maybe we cut off there. Friends, as always, we rarely get to all of you, so we love to have you here. It's only an hour, so sometimes if it's a slow day, every question gets answered. But feel free to keep coming back. This is always every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Most Fridays at 11 a.m. Not this Friday because Dr. Gray is on vacation, but every Wednesday at 1 p.m. except for like the last week of the year when we're on break. And then most Fridays over on Instagram. So lots of chances to get free help with us. And then also, we've got big stuff coming up in terms of workshops. We've got some special Thanksgiving promos coming up. So make sure you're on our email list. Make sure you're staying in touch so that you're getting all the news from us.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Bye.